Malta is located in the heart of the Mediterranean Sea, close to the coast of northern Africa and only 1,000 kilometers from Sicily. The archipelago is part of the British Commonwealth, so it's quite obvious that Arabic, Italian, and British and other cultures influenced it. Malta's language basically is related to the Semitic language family, and so is related to Arabic and Hebrew. It's the only surviving form of the Phoenicians' language, so this is truly unique. The capital of the Maltese archipelago of 3 inhabited and 2 uninhabited islands is Valletta. Valletta is built on a peninsula surrounded by 2 bays. After the Turkish siege, the Pope sent his architect, Francesco Laparelli, here, who, together with Girolamo Cassar, the chief architect of the Order of Knighthood, planned the symmetrical square-reticulated street structure of the new town. For the construction, they used rocks extracted underneath the town area. Therefore, today there's a several-kilometer-long tunnel system running under Valletta. The Opera House was bombed during World War II. There are plans for the rebuilding, however, it's better not to expect its opening in the next 1 or 2 years. The busiest street of Valletta is Liberty Street, starting from the town gate. We can recover from the fatigue of sightseeing by sitting on one of the cafe terraces. The most famous is the Cafe Cordina. Behind the cafe, inside the beautiful library, there's an audiovisual exhibition on the history of the St. John. The sound and picture effects are cutting edge. The Palace of the Grand Masters lasted 1 decade, starting from 1570. The Renaissance building has been both the master's office and residence. Today, it's a presidential palace and meeting place of the House of Commons. The tables placed on the wall of the inside yard remind us the vistas of the Pope and the Queen. The interest of the Tricaldesca, which is parallel to Liberty Street, is that it was the only street in Valletta where the knights have been allowed to fight a duel. Near there are the Toy Museum and a small private palace, the Casa Rocca Piccola, where paintings from the 15th to 17th centuries are exhibited. Nowadays, there are only 8,000 inhabitants living in the city. Many moved out to the suburbs. In Valletta, traveling by car is problematic because they drive on the left and it's hard to find a parking place. It's better if we visit the inner areas by walking or by a small horse carriage called kerosene. The star-shaped St. Elmo is built on the former place of a watchtower. Some scenes of the Oscar-winning film Gladiator were shot here. Inside, we find a World War museum, converted from the command center of the British Air Defense. Besides others, General Eisenhower's Jeep, named Husky, is guarded here, as well as 3 contemporary airplanes of the Maltese Air Force. Ones even a little interested in military history can spend illuminating hours here. The name of the St. John Cathedral indicates that it received its cathedral status from the Pope together with its fellow Medina. The building represents a classical Byzantine basilica. We can see simple, clear forms on the outside and rich Baroque interior. In olden times, the congresses of the knights were held here. When Napoleon's army ravaged Malta, the Silver Gate was painted black in order to prevent the soldiers recognizing how valuable it was. The flooring of the main ship is made from 400 carved, coloured marble gravestones, under which knights rest. 12 Grand Masters are buried here, among them de la Valletta, whose coffin was brought over from the triumphal Laodicean temple in the St. John fortress. Caravaggio's famous painting, titled St. John's Beheading, is exhibited in the Cathedral Museum. The painter escaped from Naples to Malta after he killed his enemy. The painter's signature on the painting is noteworthy as it's the continuation of the blood coming from the chopped head. The most typical elements of the local constructions are the overhanging wood balconies which rest side by side like swallows' nests, reminiscent of Arabic traditions. The Auberge de Castille et Leon was the headquarters of the British military. Today, this wonderful palace is the residence of the Maltese Prime Minister, and also this is one of the most photographed sites of the capital. The Upper Baracca Gardens, lying on the top of the almost 50-meter-high castle walls, provide us a fascinating view of the big harbour. The knights like to meet here, have a walk, interchange ideas, and devise plans. The solid bastion surrounding the town is the most fearful fortress of Europe. There are 4 bastions defending the town from the continental side, and are intersected with tunnels. The bastions are connected by walls, and here there are also deep moats to strengthen the protection. Either examining from a high-altitude lookout point or from a ship, we can discover why the huge harbour consisting of protected bays was ideal for the knights' ships. They protected it by using the Byzantine method of tightened chains under the water. Each country or town has a kind of image associated to it. Here, those images are the Knights of Malta, the Maltese falcon, and the Maltese cross. These definitions are closely connected to each other and to the past of the island. The St. John was established in the 11th century in Jerusalem by Raymond Dupuy. The main aim was to help the people participating in the Crusades. Accordingly, they had clerical, military, and curative branches. Squeezed out from the Holy Land, the knights tried to settle down on Cyprus, and later, in 1306, they bought the Dodecanessos archipelago from pirates. The Johnnies became extremely rich because with the Pope's help they obtained the property of the Knights Templar, as that order had been dissolved. The power of the knights who wore a red doublet above their chain armour with a white cross decoration on it was continuously increasing. Their army consisted of black galleys and played an important role in the trade sailing. On the island of Rhodes we can still admire the Palace of the Grand Masters and the Street of Knights. In 1522, Suleiman's army of hundreds of thousands occupied Rhodes. The knights seemed to insist on the area of the Mediterranean Sea, and first retreated to Crete, and from there to Malta. And here comes the falcon to the scene. However, many of us probably know this bird rather from the Hammett crime story than from the history books. The knights had to give a falcon as a present to the Sicilian governor in each year, and in exchange they got the small barren island of Malta. The island was Sicilian property. The first headquarters of the knights were built up in Medina. The great Suleiman, who perhaps regretted that he let the knights leave from Rhodes, besieged Malta. Repelling the attack required great sacrifices, 4 months, and the help of the Sicilian governor. After the victory, they were still afraid of repeated attacks. Therefore, they strengthened the defense of the islands. The Grand Master de Valletta invited the best architects to establish the first European town by plan-based construction with impregnable fortresses all around. Today, the Knights' headquarters are in Rome, and their embassy is located in Valletta. This is the Cavalier building behind the St. John's Bastion. . 。  . 。 . . . . . 。 . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . . Sliema's name originates from the Arabic salem, meaning peace. This is Malta's most recent and most fashionable holiday resort. We can have a bath in the small rocky bays. However, this kind of beach cannot really be mistaken for the Copacabana. Along the winding promenade, there are luxury apartments and hotels overhanging. At the end of the promontory, the huge casino building is located, close to Malta's highest building, the 24-story Porto Masso Tower. Shops and catering places border the way. The center of the quickly improving city is Paceville, which is a verdurous residential quarter on the hillside. Among the many modern houses, it's a real refreshment to our eyes to see the wonderfully decorated block. The local people like swimming in the sea. However, the hotels have their own bathing pools, and there's also a swimming pool where water polo matches are held from time to time. St. Julian's Bay shows different faces during daylight and in the evening floodlight. Most tourists spend the daytime in the hotel's bathing pools, or going out for a boat trip, or sightseeing in the town. In the evenings, crowds invade the restaurants, ice cream bars, discotheques, and bars of the St. Julian's Bay and its surroundings. On the whole island, the nightlife here is the biggest. The average age in the discotheques is extremely low, only 14 or 15 years, but older people can also find their own pleasure grounds. Luxury yachts and the fishermen's over-fatigued small boats peacefully coexist in the bay. Restaurants of many different categories and ethnicities can be found here, and the biggest shopping center of the island, the Bay Street Shopping Center. The local people love the 5-kilometer-long decoratively covered walking way with small terraces, buffet pavilions, parks, and playgrounds alongside. The Fortizza Fortress, originating from 1872, is very popular and is also functioning as a restaurant. Shipping to the east, we pass Valletta's awesome walls. The next noteworthy settlement is Marsaxlokk. The people in Malta like fireworks as much as the Chinese who invented them. They're also expert in them and produce them as well. The firecrackers are produced in several small factories, and no church or temporal event can exist without fireworks on Malta. Each village has its own patron saint, and each saint has its own event with a procession and music. The Muarja is especially popular. The name originates from the Italian word luminaria, meaning floodlighting. Originally, it was the harvest celebration, but later the event became larger and grew to a huge open-air amusement. The bonfires and the colour floodlighting, of course, remained. The fireworks often last for hours.